Hi, and welcome to the Wonders I've Seen, where there's no such thing as weird or normal. There's just different. I'm your host, Tanagra, and today we'll be discussing Pearl Next Door, or PND, a GL spinoff of the instant classic award winning BL web series, Gameboys. So grab your liquid nourishment, sit back, and enjoy the wonders.
I have never desired your good opinion.
People fear what they do not understand.
I have a headache, a badge, and a gun.
Power is yours.
Behave.
I was just trying to start a conversation.
And share the wonders I've seen.
My liquid nourishment for the day is Yorkshire tea with fig Newtons. I've been practicing my accent. I hope you heard it, rather than Yorkshire, which I've heard apparently sounds fancy. I think they all sound fancy, but moving on. All right, let's get into this. So Pearl Next Door, or PND, is the GL spinoff of the Philippine BL series Gameboys, led by actress Adriana So as Pearl. So in Gameboys, Pearl is the best friend and ex-girlfriend of Gabriel, one half of our baby gay OTP. Gameboys follows Gab wooing, gaining the trust, and ultimately the love of Cairo. Pearl, best friend ever, is there every step of the way supporting Gab and then both young men as they deal with falling in love, loss, and the, I'll say, pressures of a long-distance relationship during COVID. Pearl is the supportive best friend throughout this entire 13-episode-long emotional roller coaster. When she thinks Gab might hurt Kai, she tries to break them up. When she sees how sincere Gab is about Kai, she does everything to apologize and get them back together. Since they can't get to know each other in person, she encourages online hangouts, acting as the third wheel, the friend, so it's a little bit less pressure on both of them. She takes pictures and posts them online. She talks about how cute they are as a couple together. She gives death glares to meddling exes. She encourages them to communicate when they both are too upset to listen to each other, when they're too overwhelmed by life and COVID and just general dating anxieties. She's not perfect. She's a little meddling and a little bit too happy and bright and in your face, I say as an introvert. But she's a friend that you want on your side. And so when they made it known in the show that Pearl was bisexual, the audience and yours truly wanted her to have her own show, wanted a spinoff, wanted the story of Pearl falling in love. Now, they haven't really been upfront about whether or not the Pearl spinoff was planned, because when they revealed it, Gameboys was obviously already on air. But the writing crew, whether or not it was intentional, whether or not they planned it, they believed that Pearl was charismatic enough to support her own series. And that's very clear in how well thought out she is. There are hints throughout Gameboys that Pearl has a life outside of just supporting her best friend's love life. She's active on social media. She talks about dating. She goes between her house and her friend's house, and her parents' place, suggesting a decent, if not even good, relationship with a family that lives off screen. So this bubbly, vivacious, supportive Pearl is who we come to know and adore and want to see more of. But this is where it turns a bit. The Pearl in Pearl Next Door is not really that same person. So similar to Gameboys, the lead writer of the PND series reflects the sexuality of their characters. So Kivi Eunice Vicente, who's credited as the writer of Pearl Next Door, is an out and proud queer woman herself and has various writing credits of other sapphic stories. She, along with the consultants Bernadette Neri and Laurel Fontazo, both author educators, went through what they called an exhaustive process to get the tone of the story and the characters correct. One thing that should be noticed that Vicente said is that Pearl, and this is a quote, "Pearl has been the supportive, bubbly, and selfless best friend that I'm sure everyone wishes they had. This time we get to see her world and other side of her character, including her vulnerability." So when I first read this quote in this interview, I thought the vulnerability might include making herself emotionally vulnerable. A lot of times when you're watching dramas, a character who comes off as very happy, always supportive, they show that they have a sad side. And I'm all for that, especially when it comes to relationships. Emotional vulnerability is in some ways necessary in order to build a closeness between the two people who are in their relationship. So that is what I was expecting. Instead, we got something that I don't know if it necessarily shows Pearl's vulnerability, but rather it shows a side of Pearl that I really don't like and seems to take a bit of a turn from who Pearl is, the upfront, supportive, bubbly person, who Pearl is that we get in Gameboys. Now, I want to say several things. One, I don't necessarily think PearlNextDoor is a bad drama. It deals with things and it has elements, though, that are not my cup of tea. For one, I don't like love triangles. I don't even read novels with love triangles in them. I also had the idea of Pearl from Gameboys in my mind when I watched this. And then on top of that, I was expecting something that did what Gameboys did, in that it brought something new, not just to the Philippine drama world, but also to the GL genre as a whole. And that's a safe space drama that doesn't perpetuate any of the negative stereotypes with a happy ending. And Pearl doesn't do any of that, doesn't perpetuate any negative stereotypes. It does feel like a safe space, whether you're lesbian or whether you're bi or whether you identify as queer, but it doesn't give you that HEA. And I feel that that's probably one reason why a lot of people were sort of put off by it, especially if you are a fan of Gameboys or just in general a fan of Pearl. So in PearlNextDoor, Pearl has two love interests, Carlene Gregorio, played by Yana Bernandez, and Alex Aguirre, played by Rachel Coates. She also has a new gay best friend, Fonzie, played by Philip Hernandez. So all of them are fine characters alone. Not gonna lie, I was rooting for Alex the entire time. I didn't understand why Pearl was having trouble saying I only want to be with Alex. And I think not only is that because I liked Alex and because she was upfront and she was honest about what she wanted, but also because in creating this love triangle between Carlene, Alex, and Pearl, something that the writers didn't do is they didn't equate what Carlene and Alex were offering Pearl. So if you haven't seen it, just a brief rundown of how the love triangle starts. Carlene and Pearl have reconnected. Carlene, Pearl, and Alex all went to school together. Get this sort of small town feeling, or they were zoned to the same school from elementary through middle school, possibly even high school. They all lost touch, went different ways. You know, adulthood happens. And they're all reconnecting online. So Carlene and Pearl have been talking you get the sense that it's most of the pandemic on a regular basis, during the evening, hanging out, watching movies together, talking until they fall asleep, et cetera, et cetera. All the fun things you do are all the highly confusing sapphic things you do that then you're like, wait, are we friends or are we dating? So this definitely felt relatable. And then Pearl's like, I'm totally certain she likes me. She does all these flirtatious things and all these hints at liking me more than a friend. And the truth is, as the viewer, you see it. You see where Pearl's belief that Carlene likes her comes from. So Pearl confesses, and Carlene is like, oh no, I don't date bi women. I don't want to be anybody's learning experience. So now this is sort of a slap in the face, both to Pearl and to the viewer. And I think it's because a lot of times when we're seeing sapphic romance, we think simply women love women, and we sometimes forget about that biphobic contingent in the sapphic community that exists. For me, it caught me a bit off guard, but also I appreciate the realism of that. But I was like, you know what? I think it's biphobic, but you do you. So Pearl is like, I like you. I can't be friends with you. Also, like, you're biphobic, so this isn't gonna go anywhere. Then Aguirre, Alex, reaches out to Pearl and she's like, hey, what's up? You know, I had a crush on you when we were 12 and now I would like to get to know you again. You still seem just as cool as before. So Pearl is like, yeah, sure. Why not? And she's not talking to Carlene. Eventually, she ends up talking to both of them And Carlene is like, oh, I do like you. Yeah, that's it. And then Alex is like, I like you and I want to be with you. And that's where they're no longer equal. Because while Alex's confession comes with not only sincerity, but it also comes with a commitment, right? She wants to be girlfriends with Pearl versus Carlene comes with the I like you and I don't know what to do with it. And there's no commitment. There's no promise of a future. There's no I'm going to work on my issues due to my past exes and become a better partner for you. And that is why I have a problem with the love triangle and the false equivalency between Alex and Carlene. Like, yes, they both agree that they should both date Pearl at the same time and let Pearl decide. Okay, fine. But the thing is that from Pearl's side, they're not offering her the same thing. And she's already said that she wants a relationship, which automatically, in my mind, eliminates Carlene. And because of that, and because it takes Carlene several episodes, what is it, the second to last episode, before she's actually saying like, oh, you know what, I do want you as my girlfriend. The entire time that Pearl is dating both of them, it almost comes off as though she's leading Alex along just until she decides whether or not she's willing to let go of Carlene. And honestly, I'm not sure if that was on purpose or not. Part of the thing that makes me think that it wasn't on purpose is because the end, the series sort of ends with the possibility that maybe they can be more. And the other thing that makes me think it's not on purpose is that the series does not have a happy ending. Rather than this being sort of a realistic drama with a touch of the romantic HEA in it, it's more of the realistic drama that then stays steeped in its own realism and its angst of being in love. So we don't get a HEA at the end. We don't get a couple that's happy and in love. Rather, we get 3 single women, but who are all still somehow emotionally intertwined with each other because none of them are showing any effort to move on. And I do think that is a realistic portrayal, but it is not one I wanted. And it doesn't really seem to bring anything new to the depiction of sapphic romance or the GL genre. Like, it's so common for women loves women to be portrayed with angst that I believe it was like a week or so ago, there was a tweet that was trending in the queer romance Twitter, and yes, it does exist, that was talking about like, have we got to the point where we've decided that angst in women loves women isn't actually romantic, but that it's unhealthy and we deserve happy endings too? And that's how common it is for women loves women stories to end with people being upset or single or broken up or separated by distance. Like, luckily we've moved past the point where we're always, bearing our gaze, but now we've just gotten to the part where women never get their happily ever afters together. Like, when I was Googling lesbian love stories with a happy ending, there were 2 lists that came up. 2 lists. And even on those 2 lists, neither one with more than 15 entries. Some of them had the same film on both of them or the same show. And even not with just amongst those 30, even still with repeats, there were some that were like, well, this is the B storyline of this. They weren't even the leads in the story. It was just a B storyline and we were grasping for that little bit of happiness. Or it was like, well, they get along and they end it with being friends, but that's not a happy ending, right? And so it's very rare. And now I don't know if this is a cultural thing. Perhaps in the Philippines is full of sapphic love stories that end with HEAs. But in the films that have made their way to the United States, that is not the case. And I think because Gameboys introduced something that was so new to BL, that was so that said, no, you can make a BL and put in all the cute and fluffiness and all the drama of your traditional BL story, but still base it in reality. That going into Pearl, I wanted something similar, but I just wanted it for women. I wanted it for people who identify as women. I wanted it for people who identify as sapphic, as queer, as lesbian, as bi. One thing that this show definitely got correct is the bisexual disaster. Because Pearl is that in every single language and country. Like they really got that shall we say archetype correct. And while I was fine with that, and I don't need her to be perfect, I did want to see a healthy relationship. And you see at the end that they're working towards that. You see that Carlene is. So Pearl decides that she's not going to be with either one of them. She tells Alex, like, this is not an option. This would never happen. And then she tells Carlene, I love you and I know you love me, but I need you to heal first. Now, I absolutely adore any show that has a strong storyline that says, yes, therapy is a good thing. You need to be healthy yourself before you can be in a relationship. It's one of the reasons why I say that Pearl is not a poorly done show. It's just not what I wanted. I wanted a HEA, but the things that it gives me, it does well. Like you see that Pearl doesn't have the emotions to deal with both of these women and therefore probably isn't in a position to be in a relationship with either one of them. You see that Carlene is more or less traumatized by what she's been through with her exes. Because even though one of her exes is her best friend, she still talks about how all of her exes used her to find out that they liked men. But that's actually not true, because her ex, who's her best friend, was like, I told you I was bi before we even dated. But in Carlene's mind, she still just used her to discover she likes men. Right. So it's obvious that Carlene also needs to work through some things. So I love the fact that they're like, no, we're going to end this with Carlene going to therapy. We're going to end it with Pearl saying, Carlene, you need to heal, and this is important. And Carlene recognizing that and wanting to do that. But the problem comes in after you have Pearl deciding who she wants to be with. Then you see Alex talking to her sister, saying that she's going to stay in the Philippines for a girl, which we all understand as the audience is Pearl. And you see Carlene talking with her therapist once again. Well, love that. Saying how she wants to heal and become her best self and be the best person she can for the woman that she's really in love with. Now, I understand that sometimes people need motivation to go to therapy, but I would have liked if it was more, I want to be the best person for me, and then maybe I can be with this person. Because the idea of I'm going to go to therapy for someone and then with the expectation that we'll be together afterwards, I think it gets into dangerous dependency territory. But maybe we'll see that if there's a Pearl Next Door too. And I say that because I would actually like to see what happens with these characters. I would like to see Pearl be a bit more mature. I think in trying to make Pearl different from Pearl that she is in Gameboys and trying to show her vulnerability, I think in trying to make Pearl Next Door as a series different and stand on its own, as they've said in interviews from Gameboys, they went in a completely different direction, and it wasn't really necessary. Like Vicente talks about how she always wanted to make a lesbian rom-com, and I think that she really could have done that with Pearl. I think sometimes when you're part of a community, even though you know what's lacking, because you're writing a personal story, you have to decide, do you want to give the community something that you think that it wants, or do you want to give the community a really, really personal, emotional experience? There definitely seems to be some personal aspects to this story, but I also feel like we're all still in COVID. And while things have gotten better in certain countries, there's still a need to escape. Even before COVID, there was a lack of representation for happy, sapphic relationships. And in COVID, you're really needing that escapism even more to see somebody who in some way reflects you find happiness when it seems even more difficult now than it did before. So I don't think Vincente was necessarily wrong in wanting to show that supportive, bubbly, selfless Pearl has vulnerabilities. I just think the way that they chose to show it is somewhat problematic because it cast Pearl as problematic herself and somewhat not necessarily manipulative, but selfish. And that makes me love and care for the character less. Excuse me. I'm not rooting for selfish Pearl to get with either of the women. In all honesty, there's several episodes, excuse the heat, it's snowing outside. There's several episodes where Pearl is crying about it being so emotionally taxing that these two wonderful women are in love with her. And I was just like, really? This is what you're crying about? Or you could not date both of them. Or better yet, date the one, if you insist on dating one of them, date the one who actually wants to offer you the relationship that you want. And it just seemed like a really selfish moment where Pearl was not thinking about what she was doing to either woman, wasn't even truly thinking about even what she wanted. It was just seemed more that she was caught up in the drama of a love triangle. And that irked me the wrong way. And once again, I think the series did the right thing because a selfish Pearl I don't want her to end up with either one of them. So I feel like the drama definitely played out the way the characters were set up for them to play out. But that also isn't the Pearl that I knew from Gameboys, and that's who I was expecting. So sort of my own desire to have a happily ever after, a sapphic happily ever after. And then also I was expecting a different Pearl, played into me not enjoying the series as much. And like I said, I'm still looking out for pearlnextdoor too. I want to see Pearl happy. You know, I want to see Pearl mature. I don't know if I necessarily want to see Pearl with Carlene or Alex, but I want to see more of her. Like, what Pearl's a vlogger. What happens to her vlog? Does she get more popular? There's a really random episode where she talks about sex and the female orgasm for like 5 minutes. I don't know if I necessarily need more of that, but I feel like it served a purpose in like trying to say that she did talk about sex, or I'm not quite sure. But, you know, maybe she becomes a sex therapist and like that's her future. We don't really know what Pearl's professional life is. So maybe that was her, you know, dipping your toe in sex therapy. Like, I want to see more what happens to her. Because she reminds me of just like somebody who's really young and you're like, oh, you have potential. And that's what I feel about this character now. So I would say if you don't go into PND expecting to feel happy and relieved and like on an emotional roller coaster that ended in sunflowers and sunshine the way that you did with Gameboys, go into it expecting a drama that's about a lesson, that's about teaching you how to be in a relationship, a drama that in all honesty is teaching you more about how you need to love yourself and know what you want out of a relationship, more so than it's just trying to show you a happy love story. Because even with Pearl's friend, Fonzie, his journey is being with a very attractive man he met online, but he's been lying about who he is and how he has to come forward with who he is and deal with his own insecurities that made him lie to this guy in the first place. And Pearl's is the journey of, oh my God, I have these great options, but is either one of them actually what I want? Or am I even ready for what either one of them is offering me? So pearlnextdoor falls into that learn a lesson drama, and Gameboys falls into that fantastical romance. And they're both great, and they both have their own strengths. But I do want a happy ending for Pearl, and I do want a sapphic, fantastical romance. So Vicente, if you're listening to this, if you want to make that lesbian rom-com drama full 13 or more episodes, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, so if you're interested in continuing this conversation, you can find me on Twitter at Tanagra, GGNOC. That's TANAGRA, GGNOC. For all you Android users, you can find us on Anchor and RadioPublic. And for all you iThings users, you can listen in on iTunes and Overcast. You can also listen to us on YouTube. So leave us a message on some platform, suggest a movie, suggest a show, suggest another queer thing for me to watch, because I think everything I've done lately is queer and I'm quite all right with that. Thanks for joining. Make choices and don't call it out.